20 minutes east of the French Quarter, the Michoud Basin swallows everything. Interstate 10 cuts through the wetlands of eastern New Orleans, a concrete bridge suspended over centuries of mud and marsh. Look to the north, near the intersection of Michoud Boulevard, and a strange steel silhouette breaks the tree line. It is not an oil refinery or a shipping crane. It is a roller coaster. The galvanized steel track of the Mega Zeph sits paralyzed. A few hundred yards away, the faded yellow facade of a SpongeBob SquarePants 4D theater rots in the humid Louisiana air. For nearly 20 years, this 140-acre wreckage stood as an American anomaly. It was a massive, multi-million-dollar theme park completely abandoned, fully equipped with rides, and steadily reclaimed by the swamp. The assumption is usually simple. Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005, the water rose, and the park died. But the destruction of Six Flags New Orleans was not just a sudden act of nature. The vulnerability of this property was engineered into its very foundation. In the late 1990s, the city of New Orleans desperately wanted to inject capital into the eastern edge of the municipality. The area needed jobs, and civic leaders wanted a regional tourist attraction that could capture families traveling along the Gulf Coast. The chosen site was a 224-acre parcel off Interstate 10, bordered by dense wetlands. There was just one massive geographical compromise. The land was located in a low-lying basin, sitting roughly 6 feet below sea level. Building heavy commercial infrastructure in a bowl requires immense municipal leverage. The city authorized the Industrial Development Board of New Orleans, or IDB, to structure a long-term agreement to incentivize private investment. In 1999, the IDB signed a 75-year lease. This document gave a private development group control of the property, tying the financial future of the land to the success of an amusement park. The city retained ownership of the ground, shielding the developers from certain property taxes while transferring the operational risk. The consortium stepping into this swamp was led by Alpha Smart Parks, a company previously known for operating smaller family entertainment centers. Alpha Smart Parks partnered with Ogden Entertainment, a massive corporate conglomerate that managed venues and food services worldwide. Together, they formulated a plan for a $130 million regional theme park. They called it Jazzland. The developers secured substantial financing, including a heavy debt load carried initially by South Trust Bank. The conceptual design relied heavily on the cultural identity of Louisiana. The blueprints mapped out a 140-acre developed footprint, centered around a grand entrance named Mardi Gras Plaza. The park featured distinct zones like Cajun Country, aiming to revive the nostalgia of Pontchartrain Beach, a historic New Orleans amusement park that had closed in 1983. Designers ordered dozens of mechanical rides and integrated a sprawling log flume to anchor the swamp-themed sections. To make Jazzland a physical reality, construction crews had to battle the geology of the Michoud Basin. The soil was incredibly soft, heavily saturated with groundwater. You cannot simply pour a concrete slab on a marsh and expect it to hold the dynamic weight of a steel roller coaster. Engineers drove thousands of deep friction pilings into the mud to create stable anchor points for the attractions. The park required an intricate network of underground utilities. Crews buried miles of electrical conduit, water mains, and heavy-duty motor control cables deep in the dirt, entirely below sea level. This subterranean infrastructure created a critical structural vulnerability. The entire $130 million investment depended on an external water management system it could not control. Because the property sat in a topographical depression, gravity would not drain a heavy rainstorm. Jazzland relied entirely on the municipal pumping stations of eastern New Orleans to keep the site dry. If the surrounding levees breached or the city pumps failed, the water had nowhere to go. The park was essentially a heavily electrified basin sitting inside a larger geographic bowl. Despite the immense physical challenges, the borrowed money flowed and the steel went up. By early 2000, the skyline of eastern New Orleans had permanently changed. The towering structure of the Mega Zeph, a custom-built hybrid coaster with a rigid steel frame and a traditional wooden track, dominated the highway view. Workers applied the final coats of bright paint to the French Quarter-style facades. Alpha Smart Parks hired hundreds of seasonal employees, fulfilling the city's immediate goal of local job creation. On May 20, 2000, Jazzland officially opened its gates, ready to test its hyper-local business model against the actual commercial tourist market. Jazzland debuted to the public with heavy regional fanfare. Alpha Smart Parks projected that 5 million visitors would walk through the Mardi Gras Plaza during the inaugural 2000 season. The operators built the business model around a very specific demographic assumption. They believed they could capture both the immediate residential population of New Orleans and a massive influx of out-of-state tourists. The park offered an idealized, family-friendly version of Louisiana culture. It featured Cajun-themed restaurants, jazz bandstands, and architecture mimicking the historic French Quarter. It also included a log flume called Cypress Plunge to anchor the Louisiana swamp aesthetic. But the actual tourist market in New Orleans behaves very differently than the market in Orlando or Southern California. People travel to Louisiana primarily for conventions, adult entertainment, culinary scenes, and historic architecture. They usually stay in downtown hotels. The physical geography of the Michoud Basin immediately worked against the park. Jazzland sat 20 minutes east of the city center. There was no dedicated public transit shuttle feeding tourists from the downtown hotel district directly to the amusement park gates. Families visiting from out of state did not want to rent a car or pay high taxi fares to drive out to an industrial wetland. Furthermore, the core theme of the park presented a strange redundancy. Tourists were already experiencing the real French Quarter. They had no desire to travel out to a swamp to pay admission for a synthetic replica of the exact city they were currently visiting. The anticipated out-of-state demographic simply failed to materialize at the ticket booths. This forced Alpha Smart Parks to rely almost entirely on the local residential market. New Orleans residents did visit the park, but they utilized the attraction in a way that starved the company of revenue. A daily admission ticket cost roughly $29. However, locals primarily purchased heavily discounted season passes. A season pass holder visits frequently, but spends very little money per trip on high-margin items like food, merchandise, and carnival games. To service a $130 million initial debt load, an amusement park requires high per capita spending. The local population base of eastern New Orleans and the surrounding parishes was not large enough, nor affluent enough, to generate the necessary cash flow. By the end of the 2000 season, Jazzland recorded roughly 1 million visitors. They missed their operational target by a devastating 500,000 people. Before management could adjust their marketing strategy, a massive corporate shock crippled the operation. Jazzland was technically managed through a partnership with Ogden Entertainment. Ogden was a massive global conglomerate. They handled venue management, food service, and concert promotions across dozens of arenas, stadiums, and parks worldwide. In September 2000, Ogden Corporation collapsed under a mountain of corporate debt completely unrelated to the New Orleans project. The conglomerate filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. They began aggressively liquidating their entertainment assets to appease creditors. This sudden corporate failure severed the operational backbone of Jazzland. Alpha Smart Parks found itself entirely alone, lacking the deep corporate resources and vendor networks that Ogden had previously provided. Going into the 2001 operating season, the financial strain became visible to the public. Alpha Smart Parks had to slash the operating budget to conserve cash. They reduced marketing expenditures and cut back on live entertainment. The park hosted fewer concerts and local bands. This further reduced the incentive for season pass holders to return a South Trust Bank, the primary financial institution holding the mortgage on the property, began scrutinizing the daily revenue reports. The math was unforgiving. The park simply did not generate enough daily cash to cover the massive interest payments on the original construction loans, let alone turn a profit for the investors. The spreadsheet was dying a very quick death. Yet, paradoxically, the physical product itself was highly successful. Jazzland was not failing because the rides were poorly constructed. In fact, the park boasted one of the most celebrated new attractions in the country. The Mega Zeph roller coaster, designed by Custom Coasters International, was an engineering marvel. It featured a heavy steel support structure designed to withstand hurricane-force winds, topped with a traditional wooden track. This hybrid design provided an incredibly smooth but aggressive ride experience. The coaster stretched for 4,000 feet. It dropped riders from a height of 110 feet and reached top speeds of 60 miles per hour. Roller coaster enthusiasts traveled from across the country specifically to experience the Mega Zeph. It consistently ranked highly in industry publications. However, critical acclaim from roller coaster enthusiasts does not pay the utility bills. A single world-class attraction could not overcome the fatal combination of a flawed thematic premise, geographical isolation, and the collapse of a primary corporate partner. By late 2001, Alpha Smart Parks officially defaulted on their obligations. They simply could not pay South Trust Bank. The original developers essentially handed the keys over to the creditors. The park had failed entirely under its original independent model in less than 2 full operating seasons. South Trust Bank now owned a massive 140-acre entertainment complex sitting in a leased swamp. The bank had no interest in operating an amusement park. They needed to liquidate the asset immediately to recover their capital. But selling a massive theme park requires finding a very specific type of buyer. The buyer needed hundreds of millions in liquid capital and a proven national marketing apparatus. They also needed a portfolio of highly recognizable intellectual property to rebrand the park. They needed a corporate giant willing to take a massive gamble on the New Orleans market. Fortunately for the bank, the largest regional theme park operator in the world was currently executing a highly aggressive debt-fueled expansion strategy. In August 2002, Six Flags Inc. stepped into the bankruptcy process to seize control of Jazzland. Under the leadership of Chief Executive Officer Kieran Burke, Six Flags was executing one of the most aggressive corporate expansions in amusement park history. Burke's playbook relied on buying struggling regional parks at a discount, pumping in corporate capital, and slapping world-famous intellectual property onto the gates. For South Trust Bank and the Industrial Development Board of New Orleans, Six Flags appeared to be the ultimate institutional savior. Six Flags acquired the leasehold rights and physical assets of Jazzland for approximately $22 million. As part of the transaction, Six Flags assumed the existing 75-year lease agreement with the city's Industrial Development Board. The agreement required the corporate operator to make annual lease payments while maintaining the 140-acre developed property. In exchange, Six Flags gained complete operational control of a modern facility built with over $130 million in prior capital investment. Immediately after finalizing the acquisition in late 2002, Six Flags announced a $20 million capital infusion to renovate and expand the facility. Construction crews descended on eastern New Orleans during the winter off-season. They repainted buildings, overhauled mechanical systems, and expanded the footprint of the developed park. The goal was to convert a struggling local venue into a dominant regional destination capable of drawing visitors from across Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. The core of the corporate strategy was the immediate integration of high-profile media franchises. Six Flags held exclusive licensing agreements with Warner Brothers, And Nickelodeon. Workers installed massive signage featuring DC Comics superheroes and Looney Tunes cartoon characters across newly designated thematic zones. In the center of the park, technicians built a high-tech 3D simulator theater, housing the SpongeBob SquarePants 4D ride experience. Sheste inor Bulbrayans, creating a major indoor, air-conditioned attraction for young families. The flagship edition of the 2003 expansion was Batman: The Ride. Built by renowned Swiss coaster designers Bolliger and Mabillard, this inverted roller coaster was a proven crowd generator across the Six Flags chain. The steel track stretched 2,700 feet, featuring 5 inversions and a vertical drop of 105 feet. Riders sat in ski lift-style trains suspended beneath the track, sweeping over a flooded lagoon at speeds reaching 50 miles per hour. It gave the park a high-capacity, world-class signature attraction. On April 12, 2003, the park officially reopened its gates under a new name, Six Flags New Orleans. The rebranding effort worked immediately. Attendance surged as families and teenager groups flooded into the park. The operation created over 1,000 seasonal jobs for local residents, becoming one of the largest youth employers in Orleans Parish. The park's promotional blitz saturated radio stations and television networks across the Gulf Coast, positioning eastern New Orleans as a major regional tourism hub. By the 2004 operating season, Six Flags New Orleans reached its historical operational peak. Annual attendance climbed to approximately 1 million visitors, fulfilling the baseline traffic goals that the original developers had missed 4 years earlier. The park's inventory had grown to feature more than 30 rides, including 6 roller coasters, a water park area named Splashwater Oasis, and multiple performance venues. The Mardi Gras Plaza hummed with daily parades, corporate outings, and summer concert series. Yet beneath this public success, the corporate architecture supporting Six Flags New Orleans was under severe financial pressure. Throughout the early 2000s, Kieran Burke had financed Six Flags' rapid national expansion primarily through high-yield corporate debt. By 2004, Six Flags Inc. was saddled with over $2 billion in total debt obligations. The corporate parent needed every individual park in its system to generate massive operational cash flow to service its escalating interest payments. Within the corporate portfolio, Six Flags New Orleans was a marginal performer. While the park drew nearly 1 million guests, its per capita visitor spending remained significantly lower than premier chain locations in Los Angeles, Chicago, or New Jersey. Summer operating conditions in eastern New Orleans presented brutal physical challenges. Extreme heat, torrential afternoon thunderstorms, and intense humidity frequently cleared the Midway by mid-afternoon, stifling high-margin concessions and merchandise sales. Furthermore, the operating season in Louisiana was constrained by climate and regional schedules. Unlike Florida destination resorts that operate year-round, Six Flags New Orleans relied heavily on a weekend-only schedule during the spring and autumn, with continuous daily operation limited to a brief summer window. This condensed operational calendar meant the park had a narrow timeline to cover its fixed annual overhead, maintenance liabilities, and local tax commitments. Insurance costs also began rising steadily across the Gulf Coast region. Insuring a $150 million entertainment asset built entirely within a low-lying, flood-prone basin required complex, multi-layered property and casualty policies. While Six Flags Inc. maintained umbrella coverage across its national network of properties, the specific risk profile of the Michoud Basin site meant that any major storm event would trigger massive insurance deductibles and complex coverage disputes. By the end of the 2004 season, Six Flags management began quietly re-evaluating its capital allocation strategy. The park was generating revenue, but it was not yielding the high profit margins required to reduce the parent company's multi-billion-dollar debt burden. Plans for a massive water park expansion were put on hold. Management focused instead on controlling operational expenses, cutting maintenance overtime, and squeezing maximum output from existing infrastructure. As the park opened for its 2005 summer season, visitors walking past the vibrant French Quarter facades and riding the Mega Zeph had no reason to suspect the structural fragility of the destination. On paper, Six Flags New Orleans was a thriving regional theme park, anchored by iconic global brands and drawing 1 million people a year to eastern New Orleans. But it remained a debt-leveraged asset sitting 6 feet below sea level, totally reliant on an artificial municipal drainage system. The end of August usually marked a transition period for Six Flags New Orleans. The park prepared to shift from its daily summer schedule to weekend-only operations for the autumn season. On Friday, August 26, 2005, meteorologists tracked a massive storm system moving across the Gulf of Mexico. Park management initiated standard emergency procedures. Workers secured loose merchandise, tied down trash cans, and moved mobile food carts indoors. They parked the roller coaster trains in their respective station houses and locked the maintenance bays. The park closed its gates for the weekend, ensuring that no guests or staff would be on the 140-acre property. On the morning of August 29th, Hurricane Katrina made landfall along the Louisiana coast as a Category 3 storm. Sustained winds exceeding 120 miles per hour battered the Michoud Basin. From an engineering standpoint, the major amusement rides handled the atmospheric assault exactly as designed. The heavy steel support columns of Batman, the ride, and the dense wooden lattice of the Mega Zeph easily absorbed the hurricane-force gusts. Wind did not destroy Six Flags New Orleans. The fatal blow came from below. Eastern New Orleans occupies a massive geographical depression, essentially forming a 22,000-acre bowl surrounded by water. To the north sits Lake Pontchartrain, and to the east and south lie a network of shipping channels, including the Mississippi River Gulf Outlet and the Gulf Intracoastal Waterway. When the storm surge pushed a massive wall of water from the Gulf of Mexico into these channels, the artificial barriers protecting the basin failed. Multiple levees surrounding eastern New Orleans breached or overtopped. Millions of gallons of brackish water poured into the depression. Because Six Flags New Orleans was built 6 feet below sea level, it sat at the very bottom of this topographical bowl. The water rushed across the parking lots, broke through the perimeter fences, and flooded the Mardi Gras Plaza. Within hours, the entire amusement park was submerged under 4 to 7 feet of water. Under normal circumstances, a heavy rainstorm in this basin requires immediate intervention from the municipal drainage system. But the storm surge knocked out the regional power grid. The pumping stations operated by the Sewerage and Water Board of New Orleans lost primary electricity. Their backup generators quickly flooded and failed. The entire mechanical drainage apparatus of the city completely collapsed. The water had no avenue of escape. This failure exposed the ultimate geographical dependency of the 1999 development plan. The multi-million-dollar entertainment complex was completely paralyzed, held hostage by external municipal infrastructure. The storm passed, the winds died down, and the sun came out. But the water inside Six Flags New Orleans stopped moving. It simply sat there, effectively turning the property into a toxic, stagnant lake. The composition of this floodwater was highly destructive. It was not clean rainwater. It was a brackish mixture of corrosive seawater from the Gulf, heavily polluted runoff from the surrounding industrial corridors, and raw sewage. This chemical stew submerged the park for over 30 days. A 1-month saltwater bath represents an absolute death sentence for modern amusement park infrastructure. While the towering coaster tracks remained visible above the waterline, the actual operational heart of an amusement park lives on the ground. Modern thrill rides rely on highly sensitive electronics. Every roller coaster requires an intricate network of programmable logic controllers, or PLCs. These computer systems regulate train spacing, monitor track sensors, and engage safety brakes. At Six Flags New Orleans, these massive electrical cabinets sat at ground level, or in shallow subterranean concrete vaults. The corrosive salt water completely dissolved the copper wiring and fried the motherboards. The massive electric drive motors that pull the coaster trains up the lift hills were submerged and flooded with sediment. Pneumatic valves, hydraulic fluid reservoirs, and mechanical brake fins rusted solid within days. The entire $130 million central nervous system of the property was quietly destroyed beneath the dark water. Enclosed structures suffered total devastation. The SpongeBob SquarePants 4D Theater, built specifically to provide air-conditioned relief for families, filled with 5 feet of water. The simulator seats, digital projectors, and acoustic paneling soaked in the toxic soup, rapidly developing extreme mold infestations. Restaurants in the Cajun Country section saw their commercial kitchens, walk-in freezers, and point-of-sale systems completely ruined. The Mega Zeph roller coaster faced a unique structural crisis. While its steel frame remained intact, the wooden track and the lower wooden support beams absorbed massive amounts of contaminated water. Wood that sits in a brackish bacterial stew for a month begins to rot from the inside out. Even if the electrical motors were replaced, the fundamental structural integrity of the coaster's wooden components was heavily compromised. By late September 2005, military engineers and municipal workers finally managed to repair the levees and bring the pumping stations back online. The pumps slowly drained the Michoud Basin. The water receded from the Six Flags property, pulling back into Lake Pontchartrain and the surrounding canals. It left behind a post-apocalyptic landscape. A thick layer of contaminated, foul-smelling mud coated the midways. Debris from surrounding neighborhoods, including uprooted trees and parts of destroyed homes, littered the coaster tracks. A distinct, dark water line stained every building and ticket booth in the park, permanently marking the maximum depth of the flood. From the elevated lanes of Interstate 10, the park presented a deceptive optical illusion. To passing drivers, the towering silhouettes of the rides still looked like an intact amusement park. But on the ground, the reality was absolute mechanical failure. The physical asset had suffered catastrophic, irreversible damage. Six Flags Inc. now possessed a ruined 140-acre property, a massive cleanup bill, and an active 75-year lease obligation with the city of New Orleans. The natural disaster was over, but the corporate and legal battle was just beginning. By early 2006, the physical floodwaters had retreated, but a massive financial crisis immediately replaced them. Six Flags Inc. dispatched engineering teams and insurance adjusters to eastern New Orleans to assess the 140-acre property. They found an absolute mechanical graveyard. The initial inspection reports were devastating. Executives determined that the brackish water had destroyed roughly 80% of the park's operational assets. Rebuilding the infrastructure required much more than just scrubbing mud off the midways. Every single electrical motor, underground copper cable, and computerized ride control system needed total replacement. Engineering firms hired by Six Flags estimated that reconstructing the facility to its peak 2004 operational standard would cost a minimum of $32 million in immediate capital. This figure did not include the millions in lost revenue from missing the entire 2006 summer season. The corporate parent, already carrying over $2 billion in long-term debt, looked at the spreadsheet and made a cold, calculated financial decision. The company officially declared Six Flags New Orleans a total loss. They informed the Industrial Development Board of New Orleans, or IDB, that they had no intention of rebuilding the amusement park. This declaration triggered a complex and highly aggressive legal war. The original 1999 agreement was not a standard commercial lease. It was a 75-year covenant, tying the corporate operator to the physical maintenance and operational success of the property. The central conflict revolved around corporate insurance payouts. Six Flags Inc. maintained a massive system-wide property insurance policy that covered its entire North American portfolio, which included 29 other operating parks. Because the New Orleans facility suffered catastrophic damage, the corporation filed a massive claim covering business interruption and physical loss. The insurance carriers eventually paid out a settlement totaling approximately $75 million, specifically attributed to the loss of the Louisiana property. However, Six Flags did not funnel that $75 million back into the Michoud Basin. Instead, Chief Executive Officer Mark Shapiro, who had recently taken over the debt-burdened company, used the insurance proceeds to pay down the corporation's staggering national debt and invest in other, more profitable parks. The city of New Orleans realized that the corporate operator was taking the cash generated by the destruction of a local asset and moving it out of state. In response, the city government, under the administration of Mayor Ray Nagin, launched a ferocious legal counterattack. In 2006, the city formally sued Six Flags, demanding an immediate payment of $90 million in damages. City attorneys argued that the corporate operator was legally bound by the 75-year IDB lease agreement to either fully reconstruct the park or surrender the property and the entirety of the insurance payouts to the municipality. The city desperately wanted that $90 million to fund the massive post-Katrina recovery effort required across eastern New Orleans. Six Flags deployed a ruthless legal defense. Corporate lawyers argued that the destruction of the property was an act of God caused by the catastrophic failure of the municipal levee system, which was entirely outside their control. They claimed the lease agreement contained standard force majeure clauses that absolved them of the requirement to operate an amusement park that had been completely destroyed by an unpredictable natural disaster. This legal standoff created a toxic paralysis over the 140-acre site. Because the lease dispute was locked in federal litigation, the city could not legally evict Six Flags or terminate the original 1999 agreement. Consequently, the local government could not bring in a new commercial developer or even send municipal sanitation crews in to clean up the wreckage. The amusement park effectively became a legally untouchable, hazardous waste site, sitting right next to the high-traffic lanes of Interstate 10, completely frozen in time. While the lawyers fought over $90 million in court, the physical condition of the property rapidly deteriorated. The massive asphalt parking lot, once capable of holding thousands of minivans, was requisitioned by federal and local authorities. It temporarily became a staging ground and debris sorting facility for the broader cleanup of Orleans Parish. Trucks dumped mountains of ruined drywall, rotting furniture, and twisted metal from flooded homes right next to the decaying roller coasters. Inside the gates, the humid Louisiana summer accelerated the rot. The colorful facades of the Mardi Gras Plaza began peeling in large sheets. The SpongeBob SquarePants 4D theater, sealed shut with stagnant water inside, became a biohazard of toxic black mold. Vines and swamp vegetation quickly breached the perimeter fences, wrapping around the base of the Mega Zeph and creeping up the steel supports of Batman, the ride. The residents of eastern New Orleans watched this decay with growing anger. Before Katrina, the park was the largest youth employer in the district, supplying over 1,000 summer jobs. Now, the surrounding neighborhoods were struggling to rebuild their own flooded homes and businesses without any economic anchor. The continued presence of the ruined amusement park served as a massive, highly visible symbol of corporate abandonment. The local community felt that a multi-billion-dollar enterprise had extracted what it could, taken the $75 million insurance payout, and left the residents to live next to a rotting carcass. By 2007, the stalemate showed no signs of breaking. The city of New Orleans refused to drop its $90 million lawsuit, and Six Flags adamantly refused to rebuild. But external financial pressures were rapidly catching up with the corporate parent. The entire Six Flags chain was bleeding cash. The heavy debt load accumulated during Kierenberg's aggressive expansion era was finally crushing the company. Wall Street analysts began warning that Six Flags Inc. was speeding toward insolvency. The corporation could no longer afford to fight a protracted multi-million-dollar legal battle with a major American city over a destroyed asset that generated zero daily revenue. The company needed to cleanly sever its remaining ties to the Louisiana property, but the 75-year IDB lease formed an unbreakable legal chain. To break that chain, Six Flags management realized they could not win the fight in a standard civil court. They needed a larger, more powerful legal mechanism that could override municipal contracts and wipe out the city's demands. The solution was not going to be found in New Orleans. It was going to be executed in a federal bankruptcy court in Delaware, a move that would fundamentally alter the physical fate of the surviving rides. While the city of New Orleans and Six Flags Inc. remained deadlocked over a $90 million lawsuit, the physical park entered a new phase of exploitation. By 2007, the corporate parent realized they might eventually lose the lease battle. Before a judge could potentially seize the physical rides as collateral, Six Flags executives initiated a targeted asset stripping operation. The public broadly assumed the entire 140-acre property was a worthless, rusted graveyard. However, this assumption ignored the vertical mechanics of modern amusement rides. Several high-value attractions had survived the 2005 flood, simply because their critical components sat well above the 7-foot waterline. The most valuable surviving asset was Batman, the ride. The custom Bollinger and Mabillard inverted roller coaster originally cost over $15 million to construct. Because the station platform and the primary lift motors were elevated, the corrosive brackish water never breached its electrical heart. Six Flags management decided to extract the massive steel structure. In late 2007, the company dispatched specialized demolition and engineering crews to the Michoud Basin. Heavy cranes rolled onto the decaying asphalt of the park. Workers began unbolting the 2,700 feet of heavy steel track. The administration of Mayor Ray Nagin immediately noticed the heavy machinery. The city of New Orleans filed an emergency legal injunction to stop the dismantling. Municipal attorneys argued that the roller coaster was a permanent fixture of the leased land, meaning it belonged to the city until the $90 million lawsuit was resolved. A local judge disagreed. The court ruled that the coaster was technically movable corporate property, not a permanent real estate fixture. The legal barrier fell, and Six Flags accelerated the extraction. Dozens of flatbed trucks hauled the dismantled pieces of Batman out of Louisiana. The massive steel supports and track segments traveled west along Interstate 10. Their destination was Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, a highly profitable park located in San Antonio. Once the steel arrived in Texas, mechanics completely refurbished the trains and replaced the localized wiring. Painters covered the dark, Gotham-themed steel with a vibrant new yellow and blue color scheme. In 2008, the ride officially reopened to the Texas public as a brand new attraction named Goliath. Batman was not the only ride to escape the swamp. Crews also successfully dismantled a smaller children's roller coaster called the Road Runner Express. They loaded this family ride onto trucks and shipped it thousands of miles west to Valencia, California. It was reassembled at Six Flags Magic Mountain, operating smoothly for a completely different demographic. Several other smaller, elevated flat rides were quietly unbolted, packed up, and distributed across the national corporate portfolio. The company effectively harvested millions of dollars in usable hardware from a site they had publicly declared a total loss. Conversely, the park's original signature attraction could not be saved. The Mega Zeph roller coaster featured a galvanized steel support structure, but the actual track and lower framing were constructed from dense southern yellow pine. Dismantling a wooden roller coaster is fundamentally different from unbolting a steel one. Pulling apart thousands of custom-cut wooden beams destroys their structural integrity. Furthermore, the lower third of the Mega Zeph had soaked in the contaminated floodwaters for 30 days. The rot was irreversible. Six Flags abandoned the iconic hybrid coaster to the elements. As 2008 ended, the corporate extraction was complete. Six Flags had removed the best working assets, but the legal obligation of the 75-year lease still anchored them to the remaining wreckage. The ultimate severance required a much larger financial maneuver. By early 2009, the massive debt accumulated during former Chief Executive Officer Kieran Burke's expansion era finally crushed the corporation. Six Flags Inc. carried approximately $4 billion in debt. On June 13, 2009, the company officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the United States Bankruptcy Court for the District of Delaware. A Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing completely altered the power dynamic between the corporation and the city of New Orleans. Federal bankruptcy law provides distressed companies with a powerful mechanism called the automatic stay. This legal shield instantly froze all pending litigation against Six Flags, including the city's $90 million lawsuit. More importantly, Section 365 of the Bankruptcy Code allows a restructuring company to unilaterally reject burdensome, unexpired leases. The 75-year agreement signed by the Industrial Development Board in 1999 was no longer a binding covenant. It was merely a line item waiting to be erased. City attorneys quickly realized their legal leverage had evaporated in the Delaware courtroom. If they continued to demand $90 million, they would simply become unsecured creditors fighting for pennies in a years-long bankruptcy proceeding. The municipality desperately needed clear title to the 140 acres to pursue new commercial developers. Consequently, the city capitulated. In late 2009, the administration agreed to a final, meager settlement. Six Flags agreed to pay the city exactly $3 million and formally terminate the leasehold. The $3 million payment represented a fraction of a percent of the estimated cleanup costs. In exchange, Six Flags walked away clean, permanently shedding all liability for the environmental and physical disaster left behind in eastern New Orleans. By 2010, the title fully reverted to the municipal government. The city finally had full control of the Michoud Basin property, but they inherited a stripped, toxic carcass. The valuable steel coasters were generating revenue in Texas and California, while New Orleans was left holding a massive field of rotting wood and rusted iron. In 2010, the city of New Orleans officially regained control of the 140-acre Michoud Basin property. Mayor Mitch Landrieu inherited a massive environmental and financial liability. The municipal government possessed no theme park operating experience, and city planners immediately solicited proposals from private developers to rebuild the site. In 2011, a group called Southern Star Amusement proposed a specialized eco-park, but the financing failed to materialize. In 2014, a separate consortium pitched the Jazzland Outlet Mall, attempting to merge retail with minor amusement rides. That project also collapsed before breaking ground. Private capital viewed the eastern New Orleans site as too geographically isolated and too physically damaged. Without a permanent developer, the city found a temporary revenue stream in the California film industry. The overgrown post-apocalyptic aesthetic of the ruined park appealed to location scouts. Between 2013 and 2016, major studios leased the grounds for several blockbuster productions. 20th Century Fox utilized the decaying Main Street for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Universal Studios shot portions of Jurassic World in the abandoned parking lot. In 2015, Lionsgate constructed an 85% scale replica of an offshore oil rig over the cracked asphalt to film Deepwater Horizon. The film shoots generated localized rental income, but they did not solve the underlying real estate problem. When the Hollywood production crews departed, the site deteriorated rapidly. The dense Louisiana vegetation consumed the remaining walkways. Feral alligators repopulated the artificial drainage canals. The extreme physical isolation of the Michoud Basin, which was originally a zoning advantage in 1999, now made the property a massive security vulnerability. The New Orleans Police Department constantly dispatched patrols to deter unauthorized urban explorers and copper thieves. The city spent hundreds of thousands of municipal tax dollars annually simply maintaining the perimeter fences, fixing breached gates, and conducting security sweeps. The abandoned park was actively draining the municipal budget. The financial math of the ruins paralyzed the local government. Multiple engineering assessments between 2017 and 2019 concluded that simply demolishing the remaining structures and clearing the concrete foundations would cost the city at least $3 to $5 million. New Orleans did not have the discretionary capital to bulldoze the site without a guaranteed developer to take over the empty parcel. The property remained trapped in a legal and financial holding pattern. The remaining rides, including the massive wooden framework of the Mega Zeph, sat rotting under the harsh Gulf Coast sun. The turning point finally arrived in October 2021. The administration of Mayor Latoya Cantrell selected a local development group named Bayou Phoenix LLC to completely overhaul the property. The developers discarded the theme park model entirely. Their master plan proposed a massive youth sports complex, a regional water park, 2 hotels, and a logistics center. This shift acknowledged a harsh demographic reality. Eastern New Orleans could support regional sports tournaments and industrial warehousing, but it could no longer sustain a gated, high-ticket tourist attraction. The Industrial Development Board approved the transition. Legal and financial negotiations consumed another 2 years. On May 9, 2023, the City of New Orleans and Bayou Phoenix officially signed a long-term master lease. The agreement triggered the final physical phase of the Six Flags site. In late 2023, heavy demolition crews arrived at the Michoud Basin. They did not come to salvage parts. Their mandate was complete site clearance. Excavators tore into the rotting pine structure of the Mega Zeph. The iconic wooden roller coaster, which had defined the eastern skyline for 23 years, collapsed into splinters. Workers crushed the remaining steel flat rides and hauled the debris to regional landfills. By 2024, the dense thicket of rusted rides was completely leveled. Today, the 140-acre site is actively being prepared for the foundation work of the Bayou Phoenix Sports Complex. The original amusement park infrastructure is gone. The property has completed a 25-year cycle, transitioning from empty marshland to a corporate theme park to a flooded ruin, and finally back to a cleared development parcel. The Industrial Development Board holds the new lease, pivoting the land away from national tourism and toward regional utility. At the corner of the vast parking lot, the original 1999 entrance marquee survived the demolition crews the longest. For nearly 2 decades after the flood, its faded paint advertised a park that no longer existed. That sign outlasted Jazzland, Six Flags, and the storm itself. It stood as a permanent marker of the original geographic bet. The park did not fail simply because a hurricane breached the levees. It failed because the corporate leverage required to sustain it vanished the moment the water rose. When the structural dependency broke, the steel was extracted, and New Orleans was left to clean up the wreckage.